97% of my arbitrage bets are guaranteed winners, and I'm going to show you exactly how I find these risk-free opportunities using OddsJam. You've probably been betting like everyone else, gambling and hoping that your parlay hits. But while you're gambling, I'm exploiting a mathematical certainty that guarantees profits before the game even starts. It's all about finding moments when DraftKings has one price and FanDuel has another, allowing you to bet both sides and guarantee a profit. But the problem is that most people completely mess up this whole strategy because they're trying to manually check odds. Which is why in this video, I'm going to break down my exact arbitrage betting strategy that I've used to generate over $90,000 in profits without the need of getting lucky and hitting on a parlay. And the best part is this software does all the heavy lifting for you. OddsJam's arbitrage software scans hundreds of thousands of lines between all of the sportsbooks and then shows me the plays where the sportsbooks are out of sync with one another, where we can make almost a 6.5% return on this NBA player prop here, betting his over-under on his rebounds between FanDuel and BetRivers. The sportsbooks hate this strategy because you're no longer their customer, you're extracting money from their pricing errors. Today, I'm peeling back the curtain and showing you my complete arbitrage betting process, from calculating bet sizes to finding these opportunities and showing you how I utilize OddsJam's tools to make money. But before I share with you my exact process, you need to understand why arbitrage betting is the only truly risk-free way to profit from sports betting. The thing is, every other betting strategy requires you to predict outcomes. Even the sharpest handicappers only hit 55 to 60% of their bets, but with arbitrage, we don't care who wins or loses. Let me show you a real example from my OddsJam dashboard. Back on November 5th, I placed a wager on Harrison Barnes, a player for the San Antonio Spurs, his over-under on his three-pointers. So on one sportsbook called Prop Builder, I made a $95 wager on his over 1.5 player-made threes. I then went over to DraftKings and placed a wager on his under 1.5 player-made threes. So I have a $95 wager on his over and a $105 wager on his under. My total investment is $200. As you can see with my potential payout, if Harrison Barnes hit 2 three-pointers or more in the basketball game, my total payout is $239.40. Minus my initial investment of $200, that means I profited $39.40. If he made 1 three-pointer or less in the game, then my total payout was $235 and change. Again, that's a $35 profit from my original investment. So within this example, while I would prefer that the over hit, at the end of the day, I'm making either $35 in profit or $39 in profit. I receive my full $200 of my investment back, plus $35, or in this case, the over hit, so I made $39 in profit. Whenever you can find plus odds on the over and plus odds on the under, that's an opportunity that you can day trade the books and make a risk-free profit. Now, looking at plays for today, we can see an opportunity between Hard Rock and FanDuel on a player for the Lakers, Rui Hachimura. Again, the over-under 16.5 points and rebounds. The first thing that you need to pay attention to, just like Harrison Barnes, there is a 0.5 at the end of this line. That's considered the hook. The hook clearly defines a winner and a loser. There is no possible way in this basketball game that someone can have a half of a point or a half of a rebound. And that's what you're looking for first with arbitrage betting. The next thing that you can notice is, as I mentioned earlier, when you have plus odds on the over and the under, you can day trade the books. Or in this case, when the plus odds number, 140, is larger than the minus odds number, 125, you can day trade these books. 140 is a larger number than 125, and the plus symbols with the 140, that's how we know that we have a green light indicator that we can day trade the books. Again, as you can see, these sports books set their odds on their own. They're in competition for your business, and so sometimes they get really out of sync. When you come over here on the left-hand side and click on this calculator, you can simply just type in the calculator how much money that you want to make. Wagering $175 is going to provide us a payout of $180 no matter if the over or the under hits. If you want to scale this up and wager $200, you would put that on Hard Rock, $150 on FanDuel. Your total investment is $350. Again, if the over hits on Hard Rock, we lose the bet on FanDuel, but we get paid out a total of $360 where our total investment was $350, so we profit $10. If the under hits, then we lose the bet on Hard Rock. We win the bet on FanDuel. Again, we get paid out a total of $360 when we put up only $350. It does not matter what happens in this game. We don't care. We're making $10 either way. With this strategy, the more money that you can invest, the more money that you can make. You're making just under a 3% return off of this particular trade or investment. But finding these opportunities manually would take hours, which is why you need to understand how to utilize the software to fast track your returns. When utilizing this software, you want to make sure that you have your notifications set up for you so that you can just receive alerts, log into the books as soon as you receive that alert, day trade the books, and lock in that guaranteed profit. So over here, you want to set up your parameters. Naturally, what sports books do you have accounts with? This is going to be dependent on what state or country that you live in and what books are available to you. Next up, you can set up your parameters for your ROI. What's the minimum ROI return on your investment that you're willing to accept? For some, it might be 2%. For others, it might be 3%. I recommend at least 2%, if not higher, but only you can truly answer what's worth your time when you're executing this strategy. Last up, you just want to select the markets. Main markets and player props is where I typically like to stay in my range. And then speaking of range, this is going to just be dependent on what time of the year and what's going on in the sports betting calendar. As I'm recording this, I'm in the fall with the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, college basketball, college football. There's a lot going on. I probably want to focus my returns on today because if I'm investing that money today, I'm going to receive that money back once the game ends. But if I start to place bets for maybe next weekend's slate of football games, well, now my money is tied up from now until those games start, which means I can't utilize that money again throughout the rest of the week. So focusing on the time of year, what's going on in the sports betting calendar, and since there's so many games going on today with hockey and basketball, I don't want my funds tied up for another 4 or 5 days waiting for that football game to arrive. But once we have that figured out, come down here to Save Filters and then just name this whatever you want to do. Maybe arbs with some dollar signs. You can now click Save and you'll receive a notification whenever some bets meet your criteria. They pop up. You can log on, day trade the books within a matter of seconds, 60 to 120 seconds tops, and you've already made some money. Now, most people think that you need tens of thousands of dollars to make this worthwhile, but that's completely wrong. You can start arbitrage betting with as little as $100, but a good starting point is $1,000 to $5,000 to see consistent returns. Here's how the math plays out. Starting with $1,000, you're targeting 3% daily returns. That's $30 a day or $900 a month. With $3,000 as your starting point, you're earning $90 a day or $2,700 a month. Starting with $10,000, you're pulling in $300 a day. That's $9,000 in 1 month. The key is compound returns. The money that you make each day gets reinvested. That's how you grow your bankroll. That's how in the month of March this year, I wagered almost $200,000. I made over $15,000 in profits, but I wasn't gambling my own money. I was recycling my profits each day. So let me walk you through my exact setup when I'm looking for pre-match arbitrage bets. And guys, if you want to try OddsJam 1 week for free and save 35% off your first month, use code Billy35. It'll be linked in the description below. Over here on the filter section, as I talked about, I like to focus on a couple of the main recreational books: FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, BetRivers, Caesars, ESPN Bet. For myself out here in Arizona, I have access to Hard Rock. Now, I like to keep my setup very simple, right? I'll take a maximum of 10% of a return on a pre-match arbitrage play. In my opinion, anything that's beyond 10% is a mistake made by the sportsbook or what's called a palpable error. Because this software is finding discrepancies between the sportsbooks, sometimes we can find some errors. And so I want to stay in that gray area because going for egregious mistakes made by the sportsbooks can be detrimental to your account. For myself, I leave this as a minimum. As I mentioned before, I like to keep this as main markets and player props. Depending on the day, I will go after plays for today, or I'll keep this at the next 7 days, and that's really it. It's very simple. My DVIG settings, I'll keep this at either OddsJam's recommended book weights, or I like to choose a sharp sports book like Pinnacle. But something that you need to use immediately, why I like to go after the recreational books. OddsJam has this incredible dual button. When I click on this opportunity for Stephon Diggs over/under on his catches between Hard Rock and DraftKings, what are you going to notice? immediately the play is pulled up for me. Now, I'm not currently logged in, but if I was, I don't have to go on to DraftKings and search, well, who does Stefon Diggs play for? And where does this play even live on DraftKings? You don't have to be a master when it comes to navigating these sportsbooks because of the dual button feature. And if I move this window out of the way, you can see that Hard Rock is literally right behind it with the other side of this bet for Diggs. So the dual button feature with the arbitrage tool is a game changer, because if you log into the books that you know you're going to arbitrage with, click on that dual button, the play pops up for you and then all you have to do is figure out how much money that you need to wager on each book to lock in that profit. But the real money isn't pre-match betting. It's live arbitrage, where the returns are even higher. Live arbitrage is where I made most of my $15,000 in March. As the game unfolds, the books are constantly updating their odds, which creates even more price discrepancies. The first thing that you need to figure out when it comes to live arbitrage is which device makes you the fastest. There is no right or wrong answer here. For myself, I prefer a laptop, and I also like to use my cell phone at the same time. For some people, it's just a cell phone. For others, it's just a computer. But again, whichever device makes you the fastest, that's what you want to use. Once you have that figured out, then you want to figure out which sports books you want to attack. Log into these books first before you go ahead and start looking for opportunities. A common mistake that happens with a lot of people is that they open up the software, they start to see the opportunities, they want to try to grab those opportunities on the screen. But again, with live arbitrage betting, the games and the lines are moving really quickly, so you don't have enough time to actually grab that particular play. So what I would recommend is log into the books first on whatever device that you want to use, then go ahead and set up your system like this. I like to go after the stoppage tool. When games are in timeouts, commercial breaks, maybe there's an injury. This is when we have a little bit of extra time for ourselves to actually grab these plays. Next, I'm going after a 3 or 4% minimum return on my investment, but I leave the maximum field here completely blank because, well, I'm more than happy to go after pricing discrepancies with the books. When the game's going on live, it's very difficult for the books to understand or find out if you're a sharp or not when it's going on live and odds are constantly adjusting. Outside of that, I'll either stick to main markets or player props. Another tip if you're just getting started with arbitrage betting, simplify the process. Maybe that just means you just focus on main markets. Or maybe you just bet player props. Maybe instead of going after every single sport, we just focus specifically on an NFL Sunday for player props. And then maybe we're only going to pick a FanDuel, maybe a DraftKings, and an ESPN bet or a BetMGM. Keep your books to 2 to 3. When you're new with live arbitrage betting, this is something that you don't have a lot of practice with. You need to get some reps. You need to get adjusted to the flow and the speed of how things work. Don't get discouraged, but really want to focus in on just a couple sports books, one sport and one market. Once you can lock in a few plays, that's when you can start to expand your menu. So a very common mistake is when you first start live arbitrage betting, you select all the sports books, all the markets, all the leagues, and then things are moving so fast for you on the screen, you're not able to really lock in a single play. It can be very frustrating. Focus on 2 or 3 sports books, one market with one league, and remain patient. While there might not be as many opportunities that pop up when you're really focused in, the plays that do pop up are going to be very high ROI. So with live arbitrage betting, while we want to get volume down, it's going to be difficult to maybe grab some plays. But again, don't get discouraged because these are all very high ROI opportunities. Now, the next thing that you're probably thinking is, what happens when the sports books catch on? Yes, you will get limited by these sports books. The ideal customer is not someone that logs onto a FanDuel or DraftKings and starts making a ton of money off of these books. But the thing is, I'd rather make $15,000 in a month and get limited than never try at all. The key is having accounts to multiple sportsbooks. When one limits you, you move on to another. And in some cases, depending on the state that you live in, you might have access to the same sportsbooks odds on multiple books. For myself here in Arizona, I have access to Ballybet, BetRivers, and Desert Diamond. All 3 of those sports books utilize the same odds. So if inevitably when I get limited, say at Ballybet, I can still go over to BetRivers and bet the same exact plays. Also, if you've been a losing customer at a sportsbook for a long time, you'll have higher limits and a longer account health compared to someone who opens up a new account with that same sportsbook today and immediately starts arbitraging. Here's my actual OddsJam dashboard from the month of March. I made over $15,000 and I wagered almost $200,000, but again, I was recycling my profits from the daily compound returns. I made almost an 8% return off of my investment, placing almost 1,000 bets. The beauty with this strategy, look at how consistent each single day I was bringing in anywhere between $200 to $500. Most of this was from live arbitrage betting, but I did also manage to grab some pre-game bets as well. In the month of March, we have the NBA, the NHL, and college basketball going on. And as I'm recording this, college football and the NFL are in the mix as well. So there's even more opportunities from now until we get to March for you to add football and arbitrage profitable opportunities there. Some common mistakes that I always see from sports bettors that you want to avoid, because this is a red flag to the sports books that gives them a hot tip that you're arbitrage betting. Round your bet sizes. $100 on DraftKings, $95 here on a sports book called Desert Diamond. Guess what no one ever does? No one bets $117.41. So when you find yourself in this type of scenario, play around with the calculator in terms of your stake size until you can find a stake size that you can round your bet sizes up. Round this to $95. You might have to eat a little bit of the profits and make a little bit less, but the idea is that we want to blend in, put some camouflage on ourselves as a casual sports bettor. Never bet with loose change, and if you are rounding your bet sizes, round it with either ending in zeros or fives. Start with pre-game arbitrage and start small. Wager $5 or $10 on one side of a bet. Get a couple reps in under your belt with this strategy first before you really start to scale your operation. Mistakes will be made, and I'd rather you make a mistake on a $5 or $10 arbitrage play instead of a $100 or $300 arbitrage play. And if you're watching this and you want to take your sports betting to the next level to build a real consistent income, you need to understand the foundation of profitable sports betting first so you can actually make money consistently, which is why I've created a step-by-step tutorial showing losing bettors how to reverse their results to start generating consistent profits. Click this video right here where I break down everything that you need to know to stop losing money and start building a real sports betting income. I'll see you in the next one.